vote within 60 days. The IEBC would then set October 17th as the date for a new vote. A political ping-pong would then follow, with the opposition setting what they referred to as irreducible minimums, a set of demands that they wanted the Electoral Commission to institute before the fresh poll. The initial date set by the IEBC for the fresh poll was 17th, but then the Commission would later change this to the 26th of October to give more time for preparation.
With just 33 days to the October 17th presidential repeat polls, the National Super Alliance NASA says there will be no election if its demands are not met. Insisting that NASA is not planning to boycott the election, opposition leader Raila Odinga says the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission is not able to conduct free, fair, and credible elections as currently constituted. Among the demands Odinga has put forth is the dropping of Dubai-based printing company Al Ghurair, dismissal of IEBC CEO Ezra Chiloba, together with officers involved in electoral malpractices that undermined the credibility of the August polls, and sourcing another ICT provider.
We want to go for an election and win them. And if we lose fairly, we also will accept the results. But we don't want to go to an election where the referee is also a player in the field. We want to ensure that there is a truly neutral, independent referee, that the playing field is level.
Referring to the demands as irreducible minimum, the NASA leader claims the electoral body is working under duress and that the Commission and the Jubilee Party are now a united movement. But the opposition chief believes that there is still enough time to have the reforms in place.
What else can you conclude if you see that the chairman raised very fundamental issues, 12 points, in a memo to the CEO? Those points have not been addressed. Now he's saying they're united. There's unity in crime. We don't think that the chairman would want to do that voluntarily. So we think that the chairman is acting under duress. And other commissioners.
Odinga also dismissed recent impeachment threat by President Uhuru Kenyatta should NASA win the upcoming elections, saying the Jubilee Party enjoys official majority with the record election petitions already in court.
By the way, Jubilee knows that they cannot win if the elections are held in a proper way. That's why Uhuru Kenyatta is already given up. He's saying that he's only going to try to impeach me after I've beaten him. So he already knows that he's already been beaten. There's no way that he can beat me unless he rigs the elections. We need to know that the majority that they're enjoying here is artificial. Because for once, we have had this rigging that took place across board. You've got governors who are basically also computer chicks.
When put to task over secession remarks that are popular with the coalition's head of strategy, David Ndii, Odinga said that he still believes in Project Kenya, but laid the blame on the country's leadership.
Consider divorce if Project Kenya isn't working.
That's what other people have said.
No, he's talked about it in articles that he has written in the paper.
He said people should look at do we really have all the ingredients of an inclusive society where all people are free and feel that they are catered for?
Do you think we do?
I don't think so, but I think that it is possible to create a conducive environment that will create this country, hold this country together. I have not given hope on Project Kenya, but I think that it is the leadership that we have in this country which is actually leading people into desperation. When you see people begin to entertain those kind of ideas and views, it tells you that something is seriously wrong with Project Kenya.
And with the opposition witnessing defections, including the decamping of its fifth principal, Isaac Ruto, and now former Meru Governor Peter Munya, who has dumped NASA barely a week after joining the team, Odinga describes them as opportunists and victims in the struggle.
I've received a message from Mr. Munya, which tells me that he was under a lot of pressure, and therefore he had no other choice. And understand, and I've excused him. So I have no problems at all.
Do you think that was the same for Isaac Ruto?
Certainly. So you call those people casualties in the struggle.
October 17th is fast approaching, with NASA and Jubilee maintaining hardline positions over IEBC reforms. And now, with the so-called irreducible minimum demands, the stage is definitely set for a bruising battle. But will the IEBC survive or succumb to the mounting pressure? The clock is ticking. Kenaseka, KTN News.
On the 10th of October, the opposition shocked many with the announcement that Raila Odinga and his running mate, Kalonzo Musyoka, had vacated their candidature at the repeat presidential poll. Raila cited what he said was a lack of will by the IEBC to ensure that the irregularities and illegalities witnessed on the August presidential election do not happen again. Raila asked his supporters not to participate in the fresh poll.
15 days to the repeat presidential election, NASA took a move that many did not see coming, throwing the political scene off balance.
Considering the interests of the people of Kenya, the region and the world at large, we believe that all will be best served by NASA vacating its presidential candidature in the election scheduled for 26th October this 2017.
It is our conviction that the withdrawal of our candidates is in the best interest of the country and a win-win for everyone.
Answering a question that was on the lips of many, just how NASA would achieve what had become its rallying call, no election until its demands to the IEBC are met.
IEBC has stonewalled meaningful deliberations on the necessary reforms to ensure that the elections of 26th of October are free and fair. It has wasted valuable time engaging in public relations exercises intended to create the illusion of motion without any movement. You have come to the conclusion that there is no intention on the part of the IEBC to undertake any changes to its operations and personnel.
The withdrawal came as Jubilee was busy campaigning and Jubilee MPs debated proposed changes to the electoral laws. The changes, NASA says, are in bad faith.
The Jubilee administration's proposed amendment to the election laws demonstrates that it has no intention of competition on a level playing field. The only election Jubilee administration is interested in is one that it must win, even unlawfully.
It is clear that the amendments are intended to legalize and regularize the illegalities that led to the invalidation of the August 8th election. It stands to reason that the motive of these elections is to use the same tactics to rig the scheduled election.
Raila has formally written to the IEBC, withdrawing his candidature. By Tuesday evening, the IEBC was contemplating the legal implications of the move and says it will communicate the way forward. But NASA is relying on the Elections Act. It says expressly provides for fresh elections.
Upon our candidate's withdrawal, the election scheduled for the 26th October stands cancelled. Our withdrawal from the election requires the IEBC to cancel the election and conduct fresh nominations. The procedure for nomination of presidential candidates is provided for in the Elections Act 2011, Section 13, Subsection 1.
Even legal experts are not agreed on the country's next step, with NASA's exit providing a legal dilemma. For now, Wednesday's anti-IEBC protests by NASA are still on.
Allowing the candidature of Raila Amolo Odinga and Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka to lend credence to the election now scheduled is to participate in an illegality.
In a bold move, NASA is out to ensure what it has been insisting all along: no elections. But with a case by a Kuruau court seeking to be on the ballot still pending, if the court rules in its favor, it may not be back to square one just yet. Rita Tinina, KTN News.
Now, the period before the repeat presidential poll was marked by internal wrangles, blame games, and persistent mistrust among commissioners at the IEBC. The commissioners publicly disagreed on the independence of the commission and the state of their preparedness to conduct a fresh presidential poll. The highlights of this included that leaked memo from IEBC chairman Wafula Chebukati to CEO Ezra Chiloba, asking him mainly to explain why the August 8th election never went according to plan. Now, reports suggested that some of the IEBC officials received threats verbally or through text, with some commissioners saying that they were being pressured to resign and their security reduced. On Wednesday morning of the October 18th, IEBC Commissioner Dr. Rosaline Akombe fled to New York and resigned, saying that she felt unsafe and that as then constituted, the IEBC could not hold a credible repeat presidential election. Dr. Akombe wrote a detailed statement about her resignation and was interviewed on BBC and live on KTN News. And that was a rather intense day, as on that same day in the afternoon, IEBC Chairman Wafula Chebukati made a public personal statement, most of it sounding as though he was also going to resign. But in the last two paragraphs of his statement, Chebukati gave what he called a yellow card to all political players in Kenya. A spanner in the works was his statement that he could not guarantee a credible fresh poll.
I've made several attempts to make critical changes, but all my motions have been defeated by a majority of the commissioners. Under such conditions, it's difficult to guarantee a free, fair, and credible elections. The expectations Kenyans have on me are very high, yet I cannot move forward with a divided commission. I cannot move forward when presidential candidates refuse to put their personal interests aside and for once serve the country.
The repeat presidential election on October 26th was marked by a very low voter turnout of 39%, down from 79% in August. The day was also marked with isolated incidents of violence in Kibra and Kawangware here in Nairobi and in Mombasa and Nyanza. The poll failed to take off in 4 Nyanza counties after Raila's supporters staged demonstrations and vowed to attack election officials and voters. On the 30th of October, IEBC Chairman Wafula Chebukati declared President Uhuru Kenyatta winner of the October 26th repeat presidential election. President Kenyatta garnered 7.4 million votes out of the 7.6 million valid votes cast.
Uhuru Kenyatta, 7,483,895. I hereby declare Mr. Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta
Now, anyone who wanted to challenge President Uhuru Kenyatta's re-election had until midnight of November 6th to file a petition at the Supreme Court. 2 petitions filed by Njonjo Mue and Khalif Khalifa and businessman Harun Mwau would be heard at the court. Mue's and Khalifa's case was that IEBC failed to conduct a fresh election in accordance with the dictates of the Constitution. Mwau submitted that the poll should be voided because the IEBC failed failed to subject the candidates to fresh nominations after the August 8th poll was invalidated. On 20th of November, the Supreme Court unanimously upheld President Uhuru's re-election, throwing out the petitions on grounds that they were not merited.
Petition number 2 of 2017 by Honorable John Aaron Mwau versus the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission and 2 others, as consolidated, is hereby dismissed. The presidential election of the 26th October is hereby upheld, as is the election of the 3rd respondent. Each party shall bear its own costs.
We expected or had hoped for a different outcome, but that does not change that we still remain one country and should remain that way.
At the end of the story, it's now the time to, for the president to serve his five-year term, for him to be sworn. As I said, maneno imi.
After every election, heavily and bitterly contested, there are fallouts among the ranks and the file of the citizens. And it is the role of each and every government and every president to make sure that he carries everybody, those who voted for him and those who didn't vote for him.
NASA, who had been pushing for a second repeat presidential poll in 90 days, from the onset said that it will not recognize Kenyatta's victory. NASA chief strategist David Ndii would hit the headlines over his calls for secession of some parts of Kenya, suggesting a secession of some tribes from the quote-unquote main tribes. The Peter Kaluma bill came to be seeking to carve out 40 of the existing 47 counties from the People's Republic of Kenya. On the 31st of October, NASA leader Raila Odinga called for the formation of a People's Assembly to run the country after the opposition rejected to recognize Uhuru Kenyatta as president. Odinga said the assembly will restore democracy, constitutionalism, and the rule of law. Mr. Odinga was to be sworn in as the president of the People's Assembly on the 12th of December when the country celebrates Jamhuri Day. 2 days to the set date, NASA announced that the swearing-in had been postponed after wide consultations. The alliance says that plans to launch the People's Assembly and to swear in Raila Odinga as the president of the Assembly are still on course.
The sham election portends a president who is in office unconstitutionally. We in NASA are resolute that this sham election cannot and will not be allowed to stand. We will not allow 2 megalomaniacs to destroy the dream of freedom and democracy. To destroy the dream of freedom and democracy that generations have sacrificed and worked so hard for. If there is no justice for the people, let there be no peace for the government. NASA has 2 organs: the Coalition's Parliamentary Party, PP, and the National Resistance Movement. The resistance movement shall be responsible for implementing a vigorous, positive political action program that includes economic boycotts, peaceful processions, picketing, and other legitimate forms of protest.
Following extensive internal consultations and engagement with a wide range of national and international interlocutors, the NASA leadership wishes to advise the NASA fraternity and the general public that the swearing-in of Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga and His Excellency Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka as President and Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya and the launch of the People's Assembly scheduled for Tuesday, 12th December, have been postponed to a later date. We wish to thank the government and the people of Mombasa County who had graciously offered to host the event.
On the 28th of November, at a ceremony presided over by Chief Justice David Maraga, President Uhuru Kenyatta was sworn in as Kenya's president for a second term, alongside his deputy William Ruto. Thousands of jubilant supporters and several heads of state attended the ceremony, where in his speech, President Kenyatta struck a conciliatory tone with his opponents, pledging to incorporate their ideas of development as he begins his second and final term in office.
The country's second swearing-in ceremony since the 2010 Constitution was promulgated saw days of planning with a 300 million shilling budget, but one that may not have met the security standards of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who attended the State House luncheon but kept off the Kasarani ceremony. The Times of Israel had reported of concerns over the heavily guarded Benjamin Netanyahu's safety in a massive crowd. And so when he left Israel on Tuesday morning, going to Kasarani was not part of his itinerary. The Prime Minister, who is guarded by the Shin Bet Security Service, arrived in the country minutes before President Uhuru Kenyatta gave his speech at Kasarani and later attended the State House luncheon. From closer home, Tanzanian President John Magufuli too was missing, as other heads of state from the East African community graced the event. Magufuli, who is alleged to have ties with NASA leader Raila Odinga, sent his Vice President Samia Suluhu Hassan.
The oath of allegiance has 77 words.
The swearing-in ceremony saw Uhuru Kenyatta, who attacked the judiciary after the Supreme Court nullified his election victory following the August 8th election, somewhat change his tune about the judiciary.
Si Maraga na watu yake hao wakora hao wamesema ati basi hiyo uchaguzi ipotee. Si ndivyo wamesema? Basi tuchezee hawa watu bana. Waamuzi wa mamilioni washinda waamuzi wa watu tano. Na tukimaliza na uchaguzi, hawa watu tutadeal na wao.
Our judiciary, particularly the Supreme Court, adjudicated our electoral petitions with independence. Let me also take this opportunity to thank my friend and brother, the Deputy President William Ruto.
But it appears he is not done with the judiciary just yet.
We will engage with the judiciary to address the protracted delays in our justice system and the use of our courts to sabotage the delivery of government programs. This has been at great expense to the Kenyan taxpayer. Thirdly, through Parliament.
Among the governors, it was the Turkana Governor Josephat Nanok whose presence was conspicuous. The attendance of the ODM-elected governor, who is the chair of the Jubilee-dominated Council of Governors, perhaps an indicator of likely backroom power tussles for the council. And for Nanok, who may want to seek a second two-year term as council chair, he may be playing it safe. For President Uhuru Kenyatta, it was yet another historic day, marking the end of an election season which lasted for close to 4 months. Rita Tinina, KTN News.
Indeed, it has been a very messy, violent and prolonged election year, with many issues still up in the air. For instance, opposition's plans regarding the People's Assembly and secession calls. President Kenyatta starts his second and final term at a time when Kenya is very divided, almost right at the middle. And many say that his biggest duty yet is to seek to unite the country. Well, that's where we wrap up today's edition of Replay. My name is Sharon Momanyi. Until next time, goodbye for now.